Hello, and welcome to the third episode of the Black Swan Podcast. Quick context, Black Swan Productions is a production company in Cardiff that produces branded content and original content. And we've created this podcast with the hopes of providing high-quality educational resources and building an ambitious community. In this episode, we're interviewing the fantastic Pablo Quintela, who has worked in marketing all across the world, including being a creative director for agencies and is currently the digital marketing manager at Celtic English Academy, a leading private education provider in South Wales. I met Pablo when we produced 3 promotional videos for Celtic English Academy, and we had a blast during the filming, so now I'm keen to sit down and delve deeper into his marketing and brand knowledge. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and feel free to skip to any section that interests you the most, using the timecodes below. So, can you introduce who you are and where you work?
My name is Pablo Quintela. I work at Celtic English Academy. I'm the senior marketing manager there. And my role has to do basically with 3 big areas. One is the strategic one, the other one is the executional one, and the third one has to do with monitoring.
That's fantastic. So can you tell us about your professional journey and what led to your current role?
Well, it's a long journey, but I'll try to summarize it. My background is in advertising. So I worked for advertising agencies for more than 10 years. And at one point, I wanted to shift from being the advertising part of the communication to the marketing part, especially because when you work in advertising, you may lose track of the results of what you produce. Sure. You work with many different brands and big brands, and sure, you have the results of your communication, but at one point you're not the owner of that product, and it's harder for you to see it grow. So I wanted to change, and I've always been fond to the educational market.
Right.
And I connected with AFS International first. They were linked to Celtic, and that's how I got to Celtic.
Nice. So what are your core values, and do they guide your work? Do they have any influence on your marketing strategies?
Core values is a big word, but related to marketing, I would think of 2 main dimensions. One has to do with people, and the other one has to do with purpose.
Okay.
And I always think, and I always work with the team, and we always talk about we need to always be constantly reminded that we are working for people and with people. Sure. It's not numbers, it's not a target, it's not an audience. And the purpose is the other side of that coin, what we bring and why we are doing what we do. And I try to use that as a guide.
Okay. So what is your proudest career moment?
Proudest career moment, I think it would have to do at one point with being able to come to Wales and to Cardiff to work, because it was really like something that I had worked on and I wanted to do, and it happened because of that experience. So It was like plenty of things had happened to guide me to that point, and it was a bet because it happened during the pandemic.
Sure.
And I'm really happy that we made that jump, and I said we because I moved with my wife, so It was like a big life decision.
Yeah.
And so that's plenty of things had happened in the background to guide me to that point.
How do you ensure a distinctive brand voice for the Celtic English Academy brand?
The one thing I would say is that, and it has to do a lot with not falling into following just trends or social media, or what happens, especially with digital marketing, is that plenty of platforms have their own language, their own tone of voice, what they do, what they work. And it's hard, but you need to be conscious of not following the aesthetics or the trends of those platforms, and using those platforms in your advantage and using those platforms in your favor, but not losing sight of what you are and your brand of voice, which is quite easy to lose sight of that, because you have stories, you have reels, and every time you get bombarded with information and other creativities. So if you lose track of your essence and who you are, you may end up just replicating other brands or just following platforms. And if tomorrow another social platform comes up, you will end up again shifting your language and your brand voice.
Sure. Well, that leads me on to my next question then. So what steps do you take to evolve your brand's identity while staying true to its core values?
The key part for me is to really know who you are, know your product, know your values, but what it has to do with the level, having a good relationship between what you say and your marketing efforts and who you are as a company.
Sure.
So I don't feel it's hard for us at Celtic, because I think there is a good commitment in the company to be who they are.
Yeah.
And so it's not like from marketing, that like we need to come up with a new identity.
Sure.
That's the Celtic identity. And
Yeah.
we, of course, work on it. We give it a wider reach, but it's not like we have to come up with a different storytelling. It's part of who we are.
Sure. So can you give us any examples of any perhaps emotional campaigns that really landed? Anything where you had a specific target audience, you wanted them to feel a certain way, and then perhaps they did feel that certain way?
Well, there was one project, and you were involved in it.
Oh, there we go. Look at that.
And so it was for the summer. It was a summer program, but it was linked with students for the UK. It was a joint venture between Celtic and AFS International. And at that point, we needed to film the students' experience.
Yeah.
And we got to do some testimonials.
Yes, for
to
sure.
work with. Seeing that they had a good opportunity there, and that could change their future. It was like going back to really the root of what we are doing, what we do.
Yeah.
So seeing that, and the footage was great, and really what they said was true, because we just asked them questions. There was no script.
No. It was very authentic, I suppose, wasn't it?
It was. That was a word. And so that has a good component of informing people about the program, but also had a really good component of the experience and the reactions and what happened really with those students.
Yeah.
And I think that was really, it was emotional and it was nice.
Yeah. So what strategies do you tend to take when it comes to connecting with a target audience? How do you kind of work out their psychology? How do you work out how the content you put out or the messaging will resonate with them?
Well, the first word, it would be being relevant.
Sure.
It's like not forgetting that it's not like marketing is something that it's above everything else. Mm-hmm. Marketing is just, for me, it's just like a set of tools we have to bring up that message. So, of course, we work on the traditional parts like setting the tone or understanding the target. But that links back to the things I've answered before when we talk about people and purpose. Yeah. It's not an audience, it's not a number. These are people, they have interests, they have drivers, they have motivators to do things, or they have barriers, they have doubts. So the first thing we do is to understand them and to respect them and to value them. And I always try to think, it's like when we talk about the people we want to reach, I try to think about my friends, my family, the people I know, my nephew, he came to study to a school. So it's like, okay, how would I tell him about this?
Yeah.
It's not a number, it's not somebody just in a vacuum.
Sure. So how do you tend to stay ahead of trends and changes in the education sector when developing marketing strategies?
Well, I would say we need to be careful about following trends, in the sense that more than trends, I try to focus on tools. Okay. Because sometimes trends, especially in digital areas and digital marketing, can grow and quickly die. So you need to be truthful to your own ecosystem and the own roles that you have and what you want to do. So I try to work on I try to see it in the other way around. I try to see it as, what do I need to do? And based on that, what are the tools available? And some of these tools may be new, and some of these tools may be a growing trend. But I don't try to just chase them and go like behind the ball. It's not what it's useful for my market and my company.
So how do you build and maintain the trust of parents and students within the institution?
But trust is something you earn.
Sure.
So.
And how do you keep it?
Yeah. How do you keep it? I think that's all about the product. Sure. And all about the service, and being able to see the service you provide through their eyes. So again, whenever we think about a campaign, we think, okay, what will be the questions you as a parent would have? How can I answer that? And how can I show you what happened in the past? But it's always about, you're human, you will have doubts. I respect that. I won't try to sell you something that it's not there and it's not true. And I think when you establish an honest relationship, that's when you earn the trust. It's not the other way around.
So what level of impact does storytelling have in your marketing and communications, whether that's through video, whether that's photography, whether that's stories of students in written text? What level of impact does storytelling have?
Storytelling is everything.
Yeah.
Storytelling is everything, in the sense that it is what you cannot say in a written word. I can just, if I had to describe our services, it's like, okay, English courses. Sure. I'm not telling you anything when I'm telling you English courses, especially when it's something that it's inside and you need to understand, or we want to show you the experience of living it in Cardiff, which could be a destination that may not be as well known as other destinations. So we need to work on that storytelling to combine everything you need to do. And it's the things that you cannot express, the things that people usually connect to. So storytelling is a big part of everything you do in a communication.
For sure. So what marketing techniques do you find are the most effective for attracting and enrolling new students?
I would say that marketing allows us to reach people in a way that we couldn't do before. So for example, now, of course, video marketing is a big tool, but it's also a big universe.
Sure.
So you can now show and see it live, but you need to be mindful of you need to be mindful to be sure that you're using video marketing in your advantage and for your goal, and not just using resources to just follow and be there because I need to do video, because everybody's doing video, I need to do video. What are my videos going to say? That is key.
How can marketers avoid appearing as greenwashing or only following certain moral trends for brownie points?
I think the first step to avoid greenwashing is to have a product that avoids greenwashing.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of communication. It's a matter of working for a company that is true to its values. So whenever we work with that, whenever we communicate about that, and it's in our brochures and it's in every communication we do, we are only reflecting things that we have already worked on before.
Sure.
It's not a process that for us starts with marketing. It starts with the company at its core, and then us from marketing, we share it, we amplify it, we tell it to everybody, but it's already there. So in that sense, we are never going to be working or saying something that it's not true, and that something that doesn't have a good background. So it's a good tool because we can reflect what it's already there.
Sure. So would you say there is a difference between marketing in Wales compared to, say, marketing in England, marketing in Argentina? Is Welsh marketing different than the rest of the world?
Is that like the marketing market, or marketing for the Welsh marketing? Like doing the marketing,
yes.
or?
Yes, so marketing for a Welsh audience, or to attract people to Wales.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, I've been working with international markets for 10 years now.
Sure.
And usually the differences are more around on how people are more around on how people connect with the content. And some markets react faster than others to whatever you produce, social media, videos, brochures, but some other markets react differently some markets react differently towards the emotion you use when you connect. So every market has its own properties and details, but it's important to get to know each market and how they react, because at one point you have to do your own benchmark and knowing, is this campaign that is working great in France, why it's not working in Japan?
Sure.
And it's not working, or is that in Japan those are the numbers that are an average number?
Sure.
And the same thing happens in Wales. We work, for example, for homestay campaigns targeted in Wales, because our markets are students that are international students, so we don't market for students in Wales, but we do look for homestay families in Wales, so we have to run campaigns in Wales. And the brand voice you use is the same, but at one point it's like a little equalizer where you turn up the volume on some details or some others, and people will react and people will connect. But it's not different on the level of people will always have questions, doubts, needs, and things they are looking towards too.
Sure, that makes sense. So how do you effectively engage with a diverse audience, and what strategies do you use to ensure inclusivity?
Inclusivity for us has to do a lot with representation. So social media and digital media offers you now and since the beginning, a great opportunity of working with a multiple set of messages. It's not like traditional advertisement when you had like maybe one page printed every 3 months. Now you can create multiple messages and run them all at once. So it's a good exercise when you're doing it and you're working with characters or people or photos to be able to have a good representation in that base, and then allow that to work, to be inclusive. And it's having that, and it's also being mindful of your own biases. For example, when you are working with an image and you want to set a scene and you're talking about, okay, this is a teacher and we have teacher and students, how mindful you are about the idea you have of how a teacher looks like. And is that true? Sure. And are you excluding a certain part of the population in that image you have? So once you identify your own unconscious bias, you can work on balancing that. Okay, I may have the stereotypical teacher, but may also have 3 or 4 that are not necessarily fitting into that category.
Sure. So how important is data in influencing your campaigns? Do you utilize much data? Yeah,
it's part of the monitoring part of my job.
Sure.
And it's not only data is a tool, it's something to use to monitor and to control your results, but it's also a tool for optimizing your performance. So it's something that it's good to explain. Sometimes people think that you just run a campaign and you just go and have a coffee for the next 3 months or weeks. But we always go back to that campaign and see how we can optimize it and what is working and what is not working. And I've just written a report where we lower down the cost of acquisition per lead like 66%.
Wow.
And that was just by paying attention on what was working and how can we do it better.
Sure. So final question, what advice would you give to somebody in marketing, whether they're starting out, maybe they're in university, maybe they're an exec, a manager? What advice would you give to them in terms of improving as a marketer and general progression?
As a marketer, I think you have two big dimensions in your job, and one is the tools you have and the ability you have to communicate. But the other one is how you connect with the purpose of what you are advertising or communicating to. And that's usually, it's easy to lose sight of that, because you may be, I don't want to use the word seduced, but you may be seduced by a company with big names or big budgets. And that would be okay for one certain stage of your career. But if at the end of the line, you don't feel good about what you are saying, what you are communicating, the product you're helping to grow, if you don't feel good about that, it loses meaning, and it can feel empty. So balancing those tools and that career progression with something you really connect to, that would be my biggest advice. Try to focus on a career that will point you towards that.